actually, one very weird thing that happened in her generation, of which is still a little bit left, is that classically trained musicians uh, in some regions rather would insist that you do not listen to popular music.
Interesting.
And there's like a social status.
All right, Jeff, I think I'm ready to go whenever you guys are. Oh, you're muted.
All right, everybody ready to go? I'll call to order the Malibu Planning Commission regular meeting of February 16th, 2021. This meeting is being held by teleconference due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Planning commissioners and city staff are participating from remote locations. All votes will be taken by roll call. Members of the public can participate in the meeting or watch it by going to malibucity.org/virtual meeting. At this screen, you can click on the tab to either just watch the meeting or to sign up to speak on particular items. You'll only be able to speak during the meeting if you follow the instructions on the screen under the Sign Up to Speak tab. Once the item is called, no further speaker signups will be allowed, so please make sure you visit malibucity.org/virtual meeting early to download the Zoom application and sign up to speak. The recording secretary will call on those who have signed up to speak when the item is called, so you must be present in the Zoom meeting to be recognized. I understand that if you have a problem getting signed on, that there's a telephone number there for some assistance that you can call, and hopefully they'll be able to help you out if you're having difficulty getting signed on. Commissioners, if you have comments to make during this meeting, please raise your hand. I'll call on you in turn so that we can make our discussion clear for the record and for the public. Kathleen, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Hill?
Here. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Commissioner Smith?
You're muted, Dennis. Dennis, you're muted.
I think he's having a...
There we go. I'm here.
Thank you. Commissioner Weil?
Here.
Commissioner Mazza?
Here.
Chair Jennings?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda. John, you want to do the honors?
Sure, I'll try. This one's
Yeah.
hard. Okay, remove item 3B4. Continue item 4A to 3/1/21. Continue item 4B to, and Richard, you'll have to tell me when because I couldn't figure it out.
I think it's March 15th, John.
Okay, same thing with item 4C, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay, and continue item 4D to March 1st. Continue item 4E to March 1st, and continue item 5B to, and I don't know that date either.
I don't know that either.
Does anybody know?
Richard, you're the one that mentioned that the 5B was going to ask for a continuance. Have you got a date for that? Richard, you're muted.
I was going to ask Lily, did they indicate when they would have a chance to revise the materials?
The applicant requested that they are continued to March 1st.
Okay, it's going to be a busy meeting. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, let me just comment on, I understood from Richard that on 5B that they wanted to redo the data with regard to wave uprush. And I just would, by way of general advice, the applicant should take a look at all of the correspondence that's come in about story polls and the like, and rather than have meetings, rather than come back and then have to go back again, maybe you want to take care of as many problems as you can before you come back. And with that said, let's call the roll, please.
Commissioner Mazza?
Here.
Thank
Did we
you.
just do this?
This is the vote on the approving the agenda.
I move
Commissioner-
to approve the agenda.
Okay, thank you. And a second?
I'll second it.
Oh,
I'm sorry, who was that? I didn't catch.
David Weil.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Maza,
Yes.
Vice Chair Weil,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Chair Jennings.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. That takes us to item 2A, which is written and oral communications from the public. These are for communications on matters which we have jurisdiction over, but which aren't on our agenda. Are there
Excuse me,
speakers?
Chair. I believe I need to report on the posting of the agenda.
Yeah, you probably do.
The
Go
agenda
ahead.
for this, I'm sorry, the agenda for this meeting was properly posted on February 5th, 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're at 2A, written communications from the public. Anything, Kathleen? Anybody want to speak?
We have one speaker, Nicole McGinley.
Okay, can you bring her on?
Fine.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello. I've corresponded with Richard and I understand the wireless ordinance has been continued to March 1st. So in an attempt to get it right straight out of the gates, I would like to reiterate what I mentioned last meeting and please ask that you take special care when reading the ordinance and LCP amendments when the staff report is submitted Friday. To ensure setbacks from residences and schools are at 1,500 feet, that there is adequate fire safety and engineering requirements. This is the community's #1 concern. Please reference the letter submitted on February 1st from the honorary firefighter and medical writer Susan Foster, which includes 14 important electrical and structural engineering requirements at the application stage of the process, and that there's adequate insurance requirements and no pollution exclusions. This is also a big one because currently Malibu is left vulnerable without enough insurance. Demanding pollution insurance from the carriers that wish to install in our city will protect our city. May I please have the next slide? As we learned from Susan Foster in the open minutes at the last meeting, our city has both the power and responsibility to ensure wireless facilities are being built and installed to the highest safety standards, since the FCC allows localities to legislate for safety. CPUC says local authorities have oversight on utility poles, including wireless facilities. Southern California Edison considers installations safe because they were permitted by our city's planning department. And most importantly, because the electrical codes in LA County, Article 80-6 of Title 27, considers public utilities exempt, which includes wireless facilities. In other words, we cannot defer to the LA County codes for fire and safety standards if the utilities and wireless facilities are exempted from those rules. When you receive the staff report on Friday, please ensure we have adequate protection for our city by ensuring those setbacks, ensuring those 14 electrical and structural engineering requirements, and giving us the highest fire safety standard possible to minimize liability and maximize responsibility, and ensure that there is adequate insurance requirements. We really appreciate your service to our community and are available for any clarifications to those things I mentioned, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, Kathleen?
No, that was the only speaker signed up.
Okay, we're at item 2B, which is Planning Commission and staff comments and inquiries. Who would like to go first? I can't see everybody's screen, so get your hands up if I can. John, I see yours.
Yeah, I just have a question on what Nicole just was talking about, and that is, as I remember, there was a citywide meeting about telecommunications. Has that passed or is that coming? And do we have a new telecommunications advisor? Where does that stand? Basically, what have I missed?
Fair enough. So in about, I want to say early to mid-December, an urgency ordinance was passed at the city council level. that allowed for some additional regulations on wireless facilities that are located in the public right-of-ways. Since then, staff has been preparing a new wireless ordinance. That ordinance is planned to be presented to the Planning Commission on March 1st. And the other thing that we're doing as well, that ordinance update, I should say, will be to Chapter 17. And also there'll be some local coastal program amendments as well as part of that, so that both documents are consistent. In addition, yes, we do have a new wireless consultant. We actually have two. It is, I think HR Green Engineering and CMS. Their contracts were approved on the 11th, I think it was, at City Council. And we subsequently went for an addendum to those contracts earlier this month to include post-review compliance as well. So we have that. And the other item in the works is that there was a request made that the city have its wireless consultants prepare a map of existing facilities in the city. And so we're currently looking at what that's going to take in terms of scope of work and also cost-wise. And once we know what those costs are and the different scopes of work, we're going to bring those options to the city council for them to make a determination on how we proceed with the contract and allocate the money.
And wasn't there some citywide, some informational meeting that was supposed to be scheduled?
There was in late December, I believe. We did a wireless workshop that was conducted over Zoom. In addition, we are going to also send out a survey either later this month or early next month. And the results of that survey, we're not going to have in time for the Planning Commission. That survey is primarily targeted at the City Council to get them in public information.
Can the planning commissioners watch the wireless workshop on the city website, and is it permissible?
I don't see, Patrick can let me know if I don't believe there are any issues. I believe it's on our website. I don't want to misspeak. Let me take a moment to make sure it's up there. But it was recorded, and of course it's public record, and anybody who'd like to see it, we can make arrangements to make sure they get it. But I want to double check before committing that it is posted up there.
If it's not posted, could you send it to the Planning Commission as part of the report, or is that not permissible?
I don't see an issue. Pat,
yeah, yeah, correct. So yeah, if this has already occurred and it's recorded somewhere, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other comments? Yes, Craig.
Yeah, hi, everybody. One comment and then two questions of staff. There's been some discussion recently about how settled ownership rights need to be in order for the city to go ahead with a development application. There's been a suggestion that the city needs to look only at what's on the face of the application, and that the underlying ownership issues are a civil matter over which the project opponents can sue the developer and the city stays out of it. But the law is clear. LIP 13.6.2 says that to file the application, applicants must prove that they own the property which is the subject of the application, or provide the city with written consent from the owners. And as we saw in the attorney letter for a project that's no longer on tonight's agenda, California law defines the ownership of property to include the full bundle of rights that run with the land, including things like easements and other rights and restrictions, such as a view easement, and that those things may be owned by different parties. Now, sure, in uncontested cases, you can probably just look at the certificate of compliance and the title deed and be done. But where there's a bona fide assertion of other ownership interests, as manifest by credible evidence, such as a title report, the city must pause the application until there's definite proof of ownership or written consent, as per the code. To act on anything short of that proof, the city would be taking sides. Now, as for past practice, it's true. Sometimes the city has sided with the developer applicant by processing the application and forcing opponents to sue civilly. But I do know of other cases where the city has correctly told the parties that they must first settle the ownership issue. One or two of those in Big Rock. There are actually one or two on our agenda tonight that have gone through that at some point. And I've been aware of several others, which I should have made a note about, but I just kind of noted at the time mentally. In short, it's not accurate to say that the city always stays out of the civil matters, end of story, but rather if there are civil matters to decide, then LIP 13.6.2 says we can't proceed until those ownership interests are settled. So that's my comment. And then questions for staff, I guess mainly Richard, to help us understand how appropriate a given de minimis waiver for an OWTS is. I'm not an OWTS expert, and I don't think probably any of us are really. It seemed like it would be helpful to have some sort of guide, a couple pages, a list or a table that would give us some inkling about the scale and proportion. Just for example, like 3,600 gallons is good for up to 4 bedrooms or 50 fixtures or whatever metric might be most useful or most frameable. Something that would just make it easier to look at an application at a glance and think, oh yeah, this is completely within the scope of things and we're not going to need to pull this off the consent calendar, or this looks like it might be pushing the envelope a little bit based on these sort of standard specs. Maybe we should take a closer look. That might help speed things up on the consent calendar. And I don't know if you want to hear that's sort of a question, whether we could do something like that. Should I go to my next question, or do you want to respond to that now?
My only comment on it is I don't know if it's that simple. I would have to have a talk with the Environmental Services Division folks, the Environmental Services Department, ESD, who reviews those, because there's a lot that goes into their review. And what we're looking at the Planning Commission level or the Planning Department level is we're providing a review, and we check to see if we meet the requirements for a DMW, and those requirements relate to whether or not the property sustained damage. And then we rely on the city's experts for their guidance on the size of the system. Mm-hmm. And we check that the system is serving. We ask that they demonstrate to us, and this is what our environmental health specialist does, that the system is serving the rebuild plus 10% and not, it's not a new system. Like, for example, a couple meetings ago, there was a system they were hoping to put in, the owners hoping to put in under a DMW that was a completely new system and serving a new structure, and therefore was outside the requirements. So just to circle back, my answer would be that I would have to check with the building official, because I don't know if these are simple equations like that.
Right.
If there's a linear relationship or just what.
There may just be some industry spec sheets or something that would be handy to have to be able to say, oh yeah, they're clearly just doing the like for like plus 10, or, oh no, hang on, this looks like they're going to add another 50%, just, I don't know what that document might be, but maybe the city wouldn't even have to produce it. It might just be a matter of like what's out there in the industry. So second question, I'm curious, we've had some folks complain about how the pandemic has slowed them down on their end, and they've complained that it's slowed down the planning process. And I just wonder if you could characterize how that's affected the planning process as a rough percentage of full capacity, or, by way of illustration, my wife is an advertising producer, and she's gotten more work done at home than she ever did at the office, because she handles swapping video and audio files remotely, kind of like you guys are handling plans and documents, and she doesn't have to commute several hours a day to get to work. So I guess I'm sort of wondering, it would be helpful to have some baseline sense of how much it's affected your planning. So when we look at an extension request, for example, and they say, oh, the planning's been really backed up, what value do we attribute to that?
I think the issue is not so much the planning department but building and safety. And I believe that the issue is, building and safety used to do a lot of hands-on meeting in plan check corrections. You used to be able to walk into City Hall and ask questions, get them answered, and walk out. And since the pandemic has started, the building official has been fielding all of those inquiries. Our plan checkers from California Code Check, I don't believe have been at City Hall that I've seen when I go in. And so the building official has taken on trying to help your regular development projects. But as we all know, fire rebuilds are the city's priority. And she has been very busy being hands-on on those. And so I do think that on the plan check end, yes, there has been a slowdown because there's the availability, because we're doing everything by appointments. It just naturally, there's a window of time that we can do these in. And with appointments, obviously, we schedule them on half hours, whereas some of these folks would come in, spend 5 minutes with a plan checker and leave, and then the next one would come in. So you're seeing 2 people an hour, whereas you used to probably see up to 10 people per hour. So I would say that, yes, there's a bit of a slowdown when it comes to our personal interaction and just how easy it was before. And I use the word easy. I know some folks out there may not think it was easy, so I say that sparingly, but you could just walk in and get to us, whereas now everything has to be coordinated through phone or email and setting up meetings. And I will be honest with you, because we set a meeting for a given time, it's not as fast as just dealing with walk-ins.
Could you say it's 10% slower or 50% slower, or do you have just sort of a ballpark sense?
I would just be guessing if I were going to give you a number. I'm sorry. I couldn't even give, I would just be at a random guess, and afraid to do that.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay. Others, commissioners, comments? Yes, David?
Picking up on that theme, and without casting aspersions, whether it's COVID, whether it's underfunding, understaffed, whether it's the processes that we as a planning commission or the city council have laid down, the number of complaints about how long things are taking to go anywhere is staggering. And I throw this out just as an observation, not a firm suggestion yet, but in some period of time, call it 6 months, a year, if it hasn't gotten significantly better, I think we ought to think about extending the time given for CDP. Richard told me that Planning Commission does have the authority, that they extended it from 2 years to 3 years at the commission level. And I would think that we might want to think about extending it from 3 years to 4 years or 5 years, so we don't have people wasting their time coming back here for extensions, which we routinely grant, rightfully so in most instances, due to the very things Craig was just talking about. But I'm not saying we should do that now, because maybe as COVID gets better, that will get better. And by the way, I mean, the counter argument is, of course, that would allow people to just sit on their hands and slow things down. But I don't know anybody who's in the building process who wants to go slow. That just is a non-starter. I think everybody who's filed and wants to move as fast as they possibly can. And I'm just trying to come up with ways to lessen the bureaucratic load. But anyway, something to think about. No need to comment on it at this point. I do have 2 very specific things that I want to mention to the staff, which are just me being nitpicky. I'm sure I'm not the only commissioner who re-reviews the entire notebook the day of and the day before the meeting. If you could please notify us immediately when something is withdrawn, it would save us reading an extra 100 or so pages. And I saw some of the notices of withdrawal today got to the staff at noon and got to us at 6 o'clock. That's not good. And along those same lines, at 6 o'clock today, between 6 o'clock and the start of the meeting at 6:30, I received 20 letters from various people commenting on projects. That's ridiculous. I mean, if there isn't a time limit prior to that to get things in, there should be, because expecting us to be able to absorb as much information as flows across the transom at the last minute is just not reasonable. Sorry, I'm rambling, but that's all.
Okay, John.
Yeah, I have a comment on, well, I agree with David on letters, and we went through a big process on timing of appeals. So, I mean, extensions. So I don't think we need to go through that again. But one item 3B4 was pulled because apparently staff just gave the approval without us. And before it was pulled, I questioned whether there was a statement in there that said they don't give grading permits. Part of the reason for extending it is they couldn't get a grading permit because of the rainy season. And I got a confirmation from Adrian saying, no, we don't give grading permits during the rating season. But I remember having given many grading permits during the rainy season with the provision that they couldn't be graded during the rainy season. So I'd like Richard to explain why we do give them during the rainy season. And if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong.
So that item was removed from the agenda because we went back, looked at the resolution. In the resolution, it granted the extension approval body to be the planning director. It didn't, unlike a CDP, which requires going back to the planning commission. This one specifically says that extensions are to be granted by the planning director. So that answers that half. And yes, the planning commission, we give our approval regardless of the time of year. It's the actual grading permit that comes from building and safety that is the issue here. I did some additional research, and that permit's issued by the building official. And the building official has a discretion to issue those permits at different times of the year. And also, if, for example, if it is a property that we put a prohibition on, usually our prohibition says, no grading during the rainy season between November and March, unless approved by the building official. And that way they could get a building permit in December if that was the case. This particular property has had some issues with landslides. So it's a hillside property. So there are some concerns that if grading were to take place now, and I know we only had a couple instances of rain this year, but we don't know the future. If grading were to take place now, there is the opportunity that there could be some erosion, and the building official, while the planning commission did say, issue its approval, the building official actually has the final call on it and has made a determination isn't safe. So I hope that answers that question. And also I can understand the bit of confusion when it comes to who's giving approvals, because yes, you get a grading approval from the planning commission, which then has to go and be reviewed by building and safety, who then issue the actual permit.
But that doesn't stop them from applying to the planning commission, correct?
They could apply to the planning department year round. They could apply to plan check whenever. However, what we care about is actual construction taking place in order to determine that work has commenced and you don't need to worry about extending your planning approval. And the issue here is that the building official does not want them to start work at this time.
Okay, my second question is, since you claim the ability to give extensions, are you under the same restrictions we are as far as how many extensions you can get in the LIP?
In this case, it's since it's an administrative plan review, I am limited by the number of extensions, and I believe I'd have to be able to look up the actual permit for you, but I think it says that I can issue no more than 3 or 4 extensions. There is a limit on administrative plan reviews that only a certain amount of extensions can be granted by the planning director.
Thank you.
Okay. I will make a comment that I see some names on the board that people who are interested in 5B. I just want to make sure that everybody got the word that 5B has been continued from tonight to, what was our decision? March 1 or March 15th? What was it?
March 1st.
March 1st. So we will not be hearing 5B tonight. As far as the septic systems are concerned, I'm a little, I take a different point of view. I think that maybe the owner of a small house who had a burnout, for example, and might want to rebuild on a planning verification, but realizing that at some point in time he's going to want to sell the house. The house may be torn down. Somebody's going to want to build a bigger house. I don't see the problem with putting in whatever septic system you want. If there is going to be a house that's going to be built, that's going to be brought forward on the septic system, then that'll come before the Planning Commission, and we'll have our chance to weigh in on it at that point. Richard, your comments, if you have any. Richard?
Oh, Dennis had his hand up.
Dennis, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand. Sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
That's fine. I feel the same way on planning director's call on a lot of this stuff. There's really nothing to talk about. The septic systems are much more efficient. The projects that I've been on lately are that very same thing. A couple of large buildings, and they've got a much better system. So there's really not much to talk about. And with the extensions, I feel the same. For 10.5 years, I sat in that front row and listened to people talk about extensions, and I could never figure out why, except for there was a period of time when people were dragging it out. We don't have that right now. And I feel that it would be great to wrap these all up or bundle them, if you will, and just move on. We have a lot to do, and extensions are really nothing to talk about. These people, anybody getting an extension, usually, as David said, has a really good reason why. And all these people that I'm looking at have good reasons why they've had to ask for an extension. So it's just something else to slow us down, and I don't think it's necessary. Thank you.
Okay, Richard, you have staff comments?
I was going to actually just give a heads up on the wireless ordinance. We've taken a lot of time. We've tried to make sure that we work with all the interested folks in it and get input from also our new consultants. And so all that is kind of culminated. I've got staff that are working diligently on the report so that it gets published this week. We really want this to be heard on March 1st, but we also want to make it a point that this doesn't go out under separate cover and that everybody gets, the full amount of time to review it. So it's not a surprise for anyone, and really looking forward to getting this moving. So that's all I had, and I think we discussed it enough.
All right, thanks. That concludes Planning Commission staff comments and inquiries. We're now at item 3A. We're on the consent calendar. Actually, we have 9 items on the consent calendar. Are there items that commissioners wish to pull? Let's see, Craig.
I'd like to pull 3B3 and 3B8.
And I'd like to pull 3B9.
Any others? All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve items 3A1, 3B1, 3B2, and 3B5, and 3B6, and 3B7.
Excuse me, Chair. I just want to double check on 3B5. I'm sorry, 3B6. We have a member of the public, Sharon Karsh, who it looks like may wish to speak on that one.
Okay, then we'll pull 3B6. Then we need motions for 3B1, 3B2, 3B5, 3B7, and that's it.
So moved.
Is there a second? Call the roll, please, Kathleen.
I'm sorry, who seconded the motion?
David.
David, thank you. Commissioner Mazza?
Yes.
Vice Chair Weil?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Chair Jennings?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so it was our typical practice to go with the items pulled by the public. So let's go to 3B6 now and get a.
Okay, hang on. I'm gonna recuse myself on this one.
Okay.
Why?
Because I'm bidding it. I tried bidding it a year ago, but because of everything had to go back to engineering, so it's been a year. And
okay. Turn off your mic and your screen, and we'll send you a text when we're done with this item. Dennis, you have to turn off your screen. There we go. Okay, shall we get a staff report, please, on 3B6?
Certainly. Good evening, Chair Jennings and members of the Planning Commission. The time extension you have before you tonight is for the project located at 25306 Malibu Road for Coastal Development Permit number 14003. This time extension is requesting a 1-year time extension. Currently, the project is complete in plan check and is awaiting red stamp from the planning department so that they can commence and have their permits issued for the project. Staff and I believe the applicant team is available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, disclosures, please. Any? John, any?
None.
Craig?
None.
None. David, I see your hand up.
Yes, I spoke with a representative of the architecture firm regarding the project, but nothing that wasn't included in the staff report.
Okay, nothing for me.
I can say that too. I got a call from Joseph, but yeah.
Oh, actually, I did get a call from Joseph. Yeah, that's true. But you're right. Same for me. Okay, so let's open the public hearing. Who was it that wished to speak, Kathleen?
Sharon Karsh signed up to speak.
Okay, can you unmute her?
Yes.
I don't see her in the meeting.
Oh, she might have not.
I think I saw a Stephen Karsh.
I believe one of the correspondence that we received sort of at the 11th hour was from Sharon Karsh.
She would be under Steve if that's on the screen. I can't see the screen.
I can't see the screen. So, you know.
Do you see anyone, Alex?
No, I can see it now.
No, I don't believe she's in the meeting.
Okay.
All right. So I tell you what, let's do. Let's drop this one from the being heard first. Let's go on and take the other consent calendar items. And somebody remind me to circle back to this, see if she's joined us in the meantime. So that would take us to 3B3. That was your item, Craig, right?
It was either Craig's or Lauren.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's you want to let's have a staff report.
Could we please just get Dennis Smith back?
Oh yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll get him.
You want to send him a text and get him back on board?
Yes.
There he is. Unmute. Okay, we're good to go.
Thank you.
We get a staff report on this?
Is a time extension request of post-development permit number 08.
We got some problems, audio problems, David.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, David. It's just very quiet, very low.
Real quick, bear with me.
If you have a separate microphone, try jiggling the cable.
It's built into the camera. I'll just try to speak louder. Is that any better?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
Speak up.
So the application before you is for a 2-year time extension of coastal development permit number 08-008. This project is located at 6135 Murphy Way. This project was previously addressed as 5900 Ramirez Canyon Road. The reason that the applicant is asking for the extension is to allow some additional time to address some legal issues with respect to gaining access to the property from Murphy Way. The property owner and some neighbors are currently in private litigation right now to figure out the status of the access. And so that is the reason for this time extension. The project applicant, I believe, is standing by if you have any questions for them.
That concludes your report?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to a public hearing. Are there public speakers who wish to be heard on this item, Kathleen?
We have Don Schmitz. I believe he is the applicant.
Okay, let's go to Don.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep,
yes.
Now we can.
Chair Jennings, before we get started, point of order. You called the consent calendar for 3B in various numbers, but unless I missed it, nobody pulled it, and I think you missed 3A1, specifically when you called it out. I know you approved the balance of the consent calendar, but you specifically enumerated 3B and various action items before you, and I just want to make sure that we didn't have a procedural error on 3A1.
3A1 was part of the consent calendar that was approved, I believe. If there's, Kathleen, you want to check the notes. That was what I read off as part of the minutes or of the motion, but if I missed it, we can come back and correct it. Thanks for pointing it out.
Okay, great. So,
and we did not actually have any other members of the public besides the owner applicant for 3A1. So.
Right. Did I include it when I recited the numbers that we were going to be approving as part of the consent calendar? I know the first time I included it at 3A1.
You did.
Okay. All right. So go ahead, Don. You're on for 3B3.
Okay, great. Well, if before we start the clock, I've got a couple of very quick, short slides I'd like to show the commissioners. So basically, this is a CDP extension application. This is the subject property at 6135 Murphy Way. It was originally approved taking access off of Ramirez Canyon. Next slide, please. The CDP extension is because we are mired in litigation with the property owner, the owner of parcel 23. We have a blanket easement across our property. We need to make it into a meets and bounds described easement and amend our coastal development permit, and we're in litigation. Next slide, please. It's important to note that the city on the subject parcel adjacent to us required them to do a lot line adjustment. You can see the area of the lot line adjustment to make sure they didn't close off access to the subject property 6135 Murphy Way's ability to get to Murphy Way. Next slide, please. And this is the actual lot line adjustment that was required by the city and approved by the city. Next slide, please. We've done a grading plan to show how we would be taking access. Next slide, please. And you can see that this is the area of the road that goes through the lot line adjustment area that the city required. Next slide, please. It's important to note that any sort of amendment of the permit or the access scenario is not what's before you tonight, commissioners. It's simply a CDP extension. There was determinations made by the city before that the subject property had legal access to go over Ramirez Canyon. Next slide, please. And the title company showed that we had access to go over Ramirez Canyon. Now, what is particularly germane about this is that the subject property was mired in years of litigation over the access to go over Ramirez Canyon. So I think basically I want to wrap this aspect of it up. This is all about good cause. And the reality is the city and the property owners believed that they had access over Ramirez Canyon. In fact, the city attorney did an analysis and said that they thought that there was access over Ramirez Canyon. But that litigation was lost. And so now we're looking at taking access over the adjacent parcel to the east of us, and we are once again stuck in litigation. If ever there was a case whereupon it is clear that at no fault of the applicant, they're stuck and they need additional time to work through it, it's this one. And then I'm a little bit at a loss. I'm not sure why Commissioner Hill pulled this, but I believe it might be in regards to a Fish and Wildlife letter that was submitted to the staff by him from 2018. It's just a standard processing letter. I've seen dozens and dozens of these, and basically usually through no action, Fish and Wildlife approves it. I assume this was for fuel modification or something like that. But the bottom line is, this is not an entitlement action. This is not an amendment to the coastal development permit. It's simply an extension for good cause, and we meet that test.
All right, thank you. Are there other speakers, Kathleen?
We have a James Loftus who wishes to speak.
Mr. Loftus?
I'm checking for him.
Check again.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, I see him.
Good evening. My name is Jim Loftus. I have a house at 6093 Murphy Way, which is, you look at Exhibit 1 of this plan. You have access to Murphy Way across my property. I have an easement, that's my property. I gave an easement to 6097, and myself, along with Ralph Samarazi, have an easement to 6097, and that's clearly delineated by nice check marks. If you look at it, access via Murphy Way. I have not given an easement to anybody else. And I looked at my title, and the only easement my title gives is the 6097. So I don't know how they think they're going to reach Murphy Way going through my property and Ralph's property. He was supposed to sign in too, so I'm not sure if he has. If you just look at Exhibit 1, access to Murphy Way, on the left is Ralph's 6201, and to the right, not even marked on your map, that's 6093.
That it, Mr. Loftus?
No, I'm sorry. Just so I don't understand how you can give a permit to somebody and run their permit or their access across my land without ever even notifying me. Nobody's ever talked to me. We heard about this because somebody on our HOA told Ralph and I, they said, "Are you guys interested in this?" And when I looked at it, of course I was interested. I see they were running on my land to get access to Murphy Way, which I have not given to them or to anybody except 6097.
Okay.
So this is Cecilia Loftus. So 6135 Murphy Way does not have an easement from us to go through Murphy Way.
Who is this now? Who's speaking, please?
This is Cecilia Loftus.
Oh, okay. All right.
There was another person that was supposed to speak, Ralph, but I didn't see his name there. So maybe
Okay. The issue on an extension is whether or not the applicant has shown good cause for needing a delay. We don't really relitigate the underlying permits in these extension items. It's just a question of whether or not there's good cause. Are there further speakers, Kathleen?
No, those are just the two, James Loftus and Don Schmitz.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Back to the commission table, looking for comments or a motion.
Disclosures?
You're right, I guess I didn't do that. Are there disclosures to be made? David?
I had conversation with Don Schmitz about the project and nothing that isn't in the report.
Right, Craig?
I had conversation with Norm Haney and a few neighbors on the Ramirez side. I went out and looked at the site. I looked in on base and got caught up with some of the historical record and a couple of documents. Don just alluded to one of them that I can talk about more substantively in my comments.
John?
I was at all the prior hearings about that particular property. And I was at the hearing where they were doing. I was in all those hearings. So were you, I think.
Yeah. Dennis?
Yeah, Don called me, we talked. I didn't learn anything different than what's in the staff report.
All right, Sam, I had a conversation with Don, and it's basically the same that's in his letter. And I, like John, I lived through all the hearings on this project. All right, so again, comments or a motion? Yes, Craig.
Yeah, Don didn't call me. I don't know. Yeah, this is a tough one. I have a couple specific questions, but let me just first say, on the one hand, it seems like this is so problematic and they have had such a bite at the apple that one would want to let it die. But on the other hand, there is pending litigation. And by the rule that I just talked about in my commissioner comments up at the top, we need to let that play out. So I think that's that. Also, as sort of a general matter, the pending litigation we might do well to consider that as an extraordinary circumstance with specific regard to the requirements of granting an extension. That pending litigation is sort of ipso facto an extraordinary circumstance. So, questions. The letter from Fish and Wildlife, it wasn't just a sort of pro forma, something about brush or whatever. It said explicitly that work may not proceed, and it had to do with the blue line stream. They were basically saying, we can't allow this because of the blue line stream. And so that seems to be something that would need to be resolved. And maybe I'll just put my questions out first. And Richard, if you can keep track of these, maybe. It's 3 questions. So blue line stream with Fish and Wildlife. Secondly, the ERB required that the residents, or their recommendation was that the residents be as far to the west side of the parcel as possible, as closest to Ramirez as possible. So I don't know how that affects the access coming from Murphy, or maybe it does or maybe it doesn't, but it seems like it could have been a factor. And then finally, about the floating easement and the court case on that and where that's all going, I had some discussion with Richard about the fact that there's part of that looks to be a public easement. And I'm just wondering, how does that complicate things? Would that prevent this from happening here entirely? And could that be something that Joe Edmiston controls? So those are my questions.
I think it would be fair enough to sum up all 3 into one response. And what that would be is that if the outcome of the court case, a judge determines that there is access from Murphy Way, and that results in this new driveway, I don't see any way around it. It's going to come back to the Planning Commission for an amendment to the coastal development permit. When this project was approved, it was contemplated that access was from Ramirez Canyon. I don't believe that the commission has ever seen an access plan from Murphy Way to the property. And that would be, in, I believe, my opinion, far beyond the abilities of the planning director to approve that at his desk or her desk. So all of those would be issues that would be brought back to this commission. The effect of what it does to the home, not only would that be seen by the Planning Commission, but I would guess because of the topography and ESHA that such a CDPA would also go back to the Environmental Review Board. So the design of that road is something that the city has not seen, has not reviewed.
I guess it's just my sense that, yeah, we should let it go because of the litigation. They need the extension. But on the other hand, if there's something that says this is just categorically not feasible, then we should be able to give them a denial now, and so that they can take a step back and reconfigure and reimagine what they're trying to do here. So that's my only thought, is if we shouldn't just be, dragging them out like a cat playing with a mouse if they can't do it in the end.
Other comments? Yeah. John?
Well, this is really for Pat, but at one of the last meetings, we had a long discussion about a neighbor having a view easement. And we were told by, I believe, Trevor, civil matters, stay out of it. It's nothing to do with you. In this case, they're asking us to say, oh, it has something to do with you, give them an extension. And I'd like to know why there's a difference. And in this particular case, it looks to me like the plan for the road goes through a swimming pool, which the city approved since this property was before us. So are we approving something that we've already approved something else to be there? Not approving, but giving an extension to litigate going through the swimming pool. So again, this is going to be essentially the 7th and 8th extension. What do we have to do with it? Why are we involved? It's a different property. It's not this property. And shouldn't it play out before it comes back to us, rather than how do we know this doesn't go 10 years, 15 years? Or how do we know that any civil litigation generates a extension? And I'd like Pat to, weigh in on that, considering what Trevor said at the prior meeting. I think that was on, Phillips and Harvester, Phillips and Cuthbert, something like that. It's a view extension. Cuthbert, view easement. And why is a road easement different than a view easement?
Well, once again, here we're definitely not, before the commission is no judgment, no determination whatsoever on the validity of that easement, the location of that easement, anything. The only thing that goes on that should kind of weigh into this decision is that there is existing litigation on the matter. So there's no, myself and Richard would advise us that there's no position being taken whatsoever by this commission on that litigation. Rather, what's before you is whether the existence of that litigation and what's in the staff report, what was presented to you at, via, oral comment tonight is constitutes, due cause. And if you cannot make that finding based off of what is before you, that is unequivocally the discretion of this commission. I'm trying to remember the view easement issue, because I do believe I did work with Trevor on that, and that was, if I'm discussing the wrong project here, I do apologize.
You're on the right one.
And so so that one was someone was just saying, well, no, I do have an easement. The applicant had initiated litigation to make it clear, but what was before you there was not an extension, was not a request to say, hey, let us figure this out. And so to me that those two, that project and then what's before you today is still consistent in that this commission does not weigh the merits or litigate or determine these types of issues.
But weren't we instructed to ignore the lawsuit, and it had nothing to do with the approvals? And how is this different? We're not ignoring this lawsuit, where we ignored the other lawsuit.
Well, no, I mean, so I believe that last, that last project that the applicant had submitted ownership records sufficient to say, I have this right. Here we have an applicant saying the reason why I need an extension is due to this litigation.
And I should also add that this litigation came about, and Don can assist with this. This litigation came about after the approval by the city. At the time this was approved, all the documents indicated that the access was off of Ramirez Canyon, and that's what was approved by the city. This is something that's after the fact, I guess we'll call it litigation.
No, I understand that, but after the fact,
go ahead, John.
The fact, did the planning commission consider that guy's swimming pool, Mr. Loftus' swimming pool, when they gave approval to put it there? And is that a problem for us?
No, I do not believe it is. I mean, I can't predict how that, litigation would, the existing litigation referenced in this application is gonna turn out in reviewing the packet before tonight's meeting. And once again, maybe the applicant can clarify for me. I mean, the easement was a quote unquote floating easement, i.e. Okay. There was no specific, okay, this is exactly where it is. And so at the time the city approved that swimming pool, there is literally virtually no way to know exactly where that is. So no, that approving, or I wouldn't even say approving, any decision tonight on this will have no bearing whatsoever on that previous approval.
David?
We're into the weeds on the easement, which is not what we're being asked to review. We're being asked to review whether there's due cause for an extension. I believe there is. I'd like to move the motion to approve this.
I second it.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Craig?
Yeah, John, I can clarify. I think the difference is in this case, we have the pending litigation that constitutes extraordinary circumstances to grant the extension. In the prior case, we did it wrong, is my take on it, because while the applicant had ownership paper, so did the next door neighbor have ownership paper, and that they both looked credible, and that was a dueling litigation that we should have let play out before approving anything, but that's history.
Just as we don't try to redo the underlying case on an extension, we don't try to relitigate past issues either. So we've been moved and seconded. Will you call the roll, Kathleen?
Vice Chair Weil,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Mazza,
No.
Chair Jennings,
Yes.
motion carries.
That concludes item 3B3. We'll now move on to item 3B8. This was one that you pulled, Craig.
Yeah, let me get my paper here.
You need a full staff report on this, or you just have questions?
Which one was this? This is
the well.
Oh, the water well, yeah, on Carbon Mesa. Don't need a full staff report. Do we want to do some disclosures first?
If we're not going to do a staff report, well, all right, we'll do the disclosures. Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, I visited the site. I confirmed the topography is a primary ridgeline, which the adjacent property that never came up. But and I ran into a couple neighbors who believe that the property is owned by both owners, and they believe that they were both one parcel, and there was some question about a subdivision that I don't see in any of the paperwork. So, and the plan shows a house, approximate location of single family residence right on the primary ridge line there. So it's like we're getting the well only first, but there's a whole house in this picture here. And we also have heard that the water company will supply water, so they shouldn't be, they're not required to get a well here. They didn't say they wouldn't supply it. They said they'd supply it, but they just want them to pay to extend the line. So I don't think we have grounds to be providing the
all right. In this case, I think that was your disclosures, right?
Oh yeah, sorry, got carried away.
None for me, David.
I visited the site and discussed it with Vitas, who's the, I guess, architect, owner, I don't know, but nothing that wasn't in this report.
John?
I am familiar with the site from our prior approval of the house next door.
Dennis?
None.
Okay, so I think we'd better have a staff report on this.
Hi, good evening, Chair Jennings and members of the Planning Commission. This coastal development permit is a request to install a water well. The request is intended to serve a single family residence that's proposed in a separate application. The request came to the city after the Waterworks District determined that it could not provide water service to the property. It was established that the property is at a higher elevation that is outside of the existing pressure zone, hence the need for the water well. That does conclude my brief presentation, and I am available for any questions, as is the applicant. Thank you.
All right. Is there any, we have any speakers listed, Kathleen?
Chair Jennings, if I may add one thing.
Yes.
I wanted to add that I called the Water District this afternoon because it seems that some of the commissioners believe that the letter that is attached to the architect's plan, and the architect could speak to it as well, there was a concern that that was a will serve letter and that it's basically said, hey, if you want to pay, we can give you water service. The Water District informed me that that is a will not serve letter. I believe Dave Riedman at the Water District said that 3 plans have been presented so far by Vitas, and I want to say it was a fellow, Larry Harris, I think it was, They've rejected those 3 plans because the elevation is such that it's beyond the pressurized zone of the water district. And also to achieve the pressure needed, there are some infrastructure improvements needed. It's beyond what the water district apparently feels is feasible and or wants to take on. And so they explained to me that that is a will not serve letter. The language in it is such that the applicant is able to propose other designs. They will consider those designs, but nothing in that letter, like a will serve letter, guarantees that service will be granted.
Okay. Before we get too far into this, let me remind the commissioners of LCP interpretation number 11, which has been on the book since 2005. And basically, I won't read the whole thing, but it ends up saying that this is an administrative coastal development permit. The question is whether there are 3 votes to have it brought back as a full CDP. And under that interpretation, it says that, in other words, the Planning Commission should only consider whether or not the planning manager made the correct determination in treating an administrative CDP as such. In other words, is this a matter that the LIP grants to the discretion of the planning manager? So that's the standard, and the standards are set out in LIP 1313.6. So having heard that, let's move on to the public speakers. Are there any, Kathleen?
Yes, we have Vitas Materi, the applicant, and then we have I believe the owner, Larry Harris.
All right, who's speaking for the applicant?
I believe Vitas Materi.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go first. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. We did, in fact, exhaust all the options that we had from an engineering perspective to come up with a plan that the water district could support. It was not a matter of cost. We went to the most radical solutions, and none of these worked for the water district. And ultimately, it was determined that there's nothing we could propose that they could accept. And the water well does not occupy the ridge line. It does not stick above grade. But we cannot design a house. We can't really plan the site until we know if we hit water and where we hit water. You'll note that there are 2 widely separated well locations proposed. Obviously, we would only be using 1 well location and building that out, and hopefully we hit water on the first time out. Both areas are, both well locations are in areas where there would be no disruption of brush or anything like that. Anyway, in terms of the discussion with the water district, the owner, Larry Harris, would like to speak on that. He's had many long conversations with the district. I'm here for any further questions.
All right, thank you, Vitas. Mr. Harris, could you unmute him?
Hi, I'm Larry Harris. First, thank you for your consideration. I don't want to speak long at this other than to say that I have spent an inordinate amount of time trying to work with the district to get them to provide limited water service, and they simply just won't do it. So they presently aren't willing to do it, and I don't presently see a path where they will. So we're going to have to develop a well. If the wells can't find water, then of course there'll be no further development, and that will reduce the burden to everybody involved. If we do find it, then we'll move forward from there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harris. The further speakers, Kathleen?
No, that's just the 2.
Okay, we're back we'll close the public hearing. We'll come back to the commission table for comments, questions, or a motion. Yes, Dennis?
I can vouch for this thing with the water district. You all saw me. It took over 5 years to get water at Tuna Canyon until we built that PRD. That seemed to be pretty magical for him. Of course, it was very expensive. So I feel for this man, and I'm sure he's exhausted everything. It's not an easy trip down the road with those guys.
Other comments? Craig? Craig, you're muted.
I was going to say you could go ahead with John first. He hasn't spoken yet.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Never mind.
I'll just say.
You got comments, Craig? Make them.
Yeah. All right. I'm looking at the letter here. It is not a will not serve letter. I mean, Richard says that's what they're characterizing it as, but they're basically saying there's still some options here, and let's keep working on it. So that's I think you need the right letter from the waterworks if that's truly what they're telling you.
Okay, John?
Well, the real problem here is, yes, they have, Richard has the right to bring in an administrative approval, but he must report to the city council, to city planning commission, and it must be factual. And this report is not factual, okay? Number one, on the front page, A01, there is the letter that says, the applicant must agree to finance the construction of new water system facilities in order for the district to issue a will-serve letter. It's plain as day. It says that. Now, if there's something new, it has to be presented to us. Okay? Number two, the staff report says that the location is higher than service. Okay? We approved back in November, December, a house directly next door, which is probably owned by the same person, at 588.5 feet. It includes the water tank for District 29. It's the high point. This project is at 582 feet, and it would not have any difference in pressure or anything else. But we got told, oh, it's adequate at the other property, and it exists. It got a will-serve letter. It's the same situation exactly. It's a couple 100 feet away on a flat road that's lower than this property. So the staff report actually had a misstatement in it. Okay, so what we are saying is, essentially, and I do not believe we can say this, we'll accept an administrative plan review or whatever this is called, saying no pressure when we already had them certify that on the lot next door. The water company came in and said, we're putting in a new tank and we have a tank there. And they have a will serve letter that says they will serve. And it's a letter. It's not somebody saying I called somebody and said so-and-so, which is not mentioned in the staff report at all. So at the very least,
I have a question.
Administrative coastal development permit has to be withdrawn and resubmitted with factual items on it. We cannot see factual items presented to us that are contrary to what the staff report says. It's right on the plan, right on it, page 1.
Yeah. I have a question. Is there some rule that says that a well permit cannot be issued if the water district is able to provide service?
There is not a rule. I've double checked that in the city's policies and guidelines. We don't have a rule. And also, just to be very quick, I want to point out that letter says if the water district accepts the plan proposed by the applicant. And that letter also states that the proposed site is higher than the elevation they are wishing to serve. So I just want to make sure that's clear that staff based its information on information provided by the water district, and those were not just statements that were interpreted some other way.
Okay, so the rule here is that if there are 3 votes to bring it back, it can come back. Do you wish to make a motion, John or Craig?
Oh, I don't. I want to continue the conversation because if
you don't have a motion, we will move on. We're not going to continue this.
I'm going to continue talking until I get 3 votes to stop me.
Do you have a motion to make?
I do not have a motion to make. I have a comment on that. It is presented to us as part of the staff report that this property is lower, not higher. Okay, it's right on the plan. It's also, as you know, Jeff, you've been on this commission for years, always, and there's plenty of examples, we have allowed wells if they are higher than the service area. We have not allowed wells lower than the service area. That's been done many, many, many times. In fact, every single well we've allowed. So to take in a staff report that is on its face incorrect, John, do
you have a motion you wish to make?
Yes, I want this to come back corrected.
What's your motion, John?
I move that this be sent back to staff to come out with a factual staff report.
Is there a second to the motion? Craig, are you seconding the motion?
Yeah, I would clarify it if I may, to say that we need the correct letter one way or the other.
We also need the correct elevations.
Okay, so the motion is to bring back, I take it, either way, the motion is to bring back this item for a full CDP. That's the only motion. That's the only motion that's available to us.
We can't continue a consent item?
No, the item is if it does not come back as if there's a motion to bring it back as a full CDP, that's one thing. Otherwise, it's a receive and file and it moves on.
That is not true. We have done it before. We have had errors on consent.
All right, John, just make your motion. Can you count to 3? Let's go.
I made my motion. Send it back and get it corrected.
Okay.
And we have done that before.
And that's the second. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Call the roll, please, Kathleen.
Certainly. Are we continuing this to a particular date? Or
No. This is a motion to have it brought back. This is not a motion to get. I'm sorry. I may have misunderstood. I thought that this was a motion to have this brought back as a full CDP, John. Is that right or wrong?
No, I want it corrected.
Okay, that it's a motion to continue?
Yes.
A motion to continue to?
Whenever staff is available to correct it.
Okay, all right. Call the roll, then, Kathleen.
Okay, are we going to designate a date or just to a date uncertain?
Just to a date uncertain.
Thank you. Commissioner Mazza?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
No.
Vice Chair Weil?
No.
Chair Jennings?
Oh.
Motion.
Or another motion?
Fails.
Yes, I'd like to move that we receive.
It's a receive and file. If nobody wants to bring it back, it's a receive and file. If hearing no further motion, it's a receive and file, and we'll move on. That takes us to item 3B9. This is yours, John.
Yes, it's the same situation. We got a staff report that said that this septic tank was destroyed by the fire and is required to be rebuilt. Okay?
John, if we're going to get into this, maybe we ought to have a staff report and go through the whole deal.
Okay.
Jessica, is that yours?
Yes. Good evening, Chair Jennings and members of the Planning Commission. The item you have before you tonight is for de minimis waiver number 20002 for the project located at 28869 Selfridge Drive. The project is to replace a septic system with a 3,634 gallon micro septic tank with 1 new sievage pit and 2 for future percolation. That concludes my very brief staff report. Staff is available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Disclosures, John?
I did send an email to Jessica, which she answered, bringing up the question of whether it was destroyed and whether it was required.
None for me.
None for me.
I walked the site with the report and looked to see where I thought everything would be going.
Craig?
None.
Dennis?
None.
Okay. Have we got speakers, Kathleen?
We do not.
Okay.
Okay, there's nobody signed up to speak for it. We will then we will open and close the public hearing in one swift motion, and we'll bring back to the commission for discussion, motion, or comments. John.
Well, this is sort of the same situation as the last time. I do not think it is proper for us to approve something or consent to it if there are known falsehoods in the staff report. And I got a reply. I looked at, as a matter of disclosure, I looked at this property on Google and I compared it to the staff report. And the area, and David will know this, the area where the septic tank was is completely covered for many feet around by a cement slab. Okay. So I said, well, there's absolutely no way this was destroyed by the fire. I sent an email to Jessica and she replied, the fire assessment did not show the OWTS was damaged. The property was damaged, okay, but not the OWTS. Okay, that's an error in the staff report. Okay, and then I asked what the size of the old tank was, the new tank, and whether it would service the new building. And yes, 64 units, 64 fixtures were in both. Okay, I don't really care a whole lot about that, but I have a very hard time on being on a planning commission where they accept faulty information from staff, and it becomes part of the public record that we have faulty information. And all I want, again, is I'm going to make a motion that this be continued until staff comes back with a proper staff report.
Okay, is it motion seconded? Hearing none, motion fails.
I'd like to hear from staff their response to John.
Ask them.
Commissioner Mazza's correct. Based off of, I honestly didn't have time to dig in this too deep, but in the report it says as a result of damage sustained to the existing tank. And from what we know of, I don't know about the lids on the system or little details like that. But overall, the system was not damaged. However, that is not a requirement of a DMW.
If it's not a requirement,
the DMW, it's not a requirement that the system be damaged in order to qualify as a de minimis waiver. The requirement is that the house sustained damage, and as brought up in the aerial photos by Commissioner Mazza, the house is gone. The house did burn.
okay. John, anything else?
To make a point that it's a requirement that staff give us factual information. We make decisions based on what they tell us. And in 2 instances tonight, they didn't. So you guys accepted letting them not tell you the truth. And this is another case where it's absolutely admitted that the staff report is incorrect. And all I want to do, if I'm going to spend a whole week looking over stuff, is know that it's correct.
All right. So what you want is for an amended staff report, right? That changes that shows that the system itself was not damaged, but that the house was. David, I'm sorry, David.
I think that's fixable with one simple deletion in this report.
We cannot change consent items.
Well, but you're saying they should come back, and I'm explaining that they come back by deleting one clause, and then we're done, right?
Sure.
So
if everybody accepts it, yes.
So if you look at the staff report, the second paragraph under proposed project description, if you simply delete as a result of the damage sustained to the existing septic tank and start the sentence with a new OWTS will be installed to replace the existing one, I think that should take care of it.
I assume that's probably true.
Okay. If that's the case, then Patrick, is there a way that we can amend the commission report, the agenda report? Because we're not changing the de minimis waiver order, right?
Correct. No, yeah, we are not. And, I guess, I may want to see what Richard has to say about this. However, this type of, I guess, I kind of compare this almost to a typo. To me, seems fine to change or direct staff to change. I would caution, I know a lot of these come up and there is issues with trying to delve into them and change them, et cetera. And so that's not what we're doing here. This is basically just to reflect a factual typo. I don't have a problem with it, but Richard, I mean, I think that would likely be, if that's not the specific motion, maybe it's just direct staff to do so. I mean, I think we are somewhat getting into as I said, this is not a substantive thing related to the de minimis waiver permit. It is more of a factual correction of a typo.
So let me ask this, Richard and Jessica, that's what David Weil suggested would be correct as far as your understanding is concerned. Is that right?
That is correct. Pat, could we do a minute order on this, and then that way we could just remove that and move on?
It has nothing really to do with the order that you're making, with the order on the DMW. It's just a question of the
differ on all of this. This is the reason given for this de minimis waiver. It's not a typo. It is the reason given. So
let me ask you this,
the public has a right to notice. They have a right to notice on staff reports. And if it's a consent item, and this can be taken, I guess, to the city attorney, but consent items may not be changed when there's a material error.
It's not. Let me bring you up to date on consent items. This started in the early 200s when I first came on this commission. We used to have everything treated as an item that would come up. And I said, there's some things that are just not debatable. Why don't we just lump all those together in consent item so we can vote them all in at once? It has nothing to do with whether things can be changed or not changed. It was just simply a matter of procedural convenience that I personally introduced I came onto the commission.
I was there.
But it has nothing to do with it. You're just making this up, John.
No, I am not. I am not. I'm saying if you come to the planning commission, present them a staff report and present it to the public in due time, and you're wrong. Consent items were done to pass items that were true, not false.
I agree with you 100% that it would be much better. It would be the absolute requirement that everything that is presented to us in a staff report be 100% true. In this particular case, you've got a real person who's trying to get their septic tank system approved. If we do as you say, it'll simply delay that process. If we deny it, we end up with a conventional system instead of a new advanced wastewater system. It doesn't seem to me that the game is really worth the candle.
I am not asking for a denial. I'm asking for a factual staff report. In the case of real staff reports, we can change things.
John, what's the codes?
We can discuss them, but we cannot accept something that's incorrect.
What the code says is that if the planning commission feels that the de minimis waiver should not be granted, we can make that decision. Is that a motion you wish to make?
If the planning commission can consent to an item presented to them, then it passes. And this was presented to us incorrectly. Now, they're not going to put this septic tank in 2 weeks.
Is this a motion? Is this a motion you wish to make, John?
I wish to make a motion that this come back in the correct form.
I believe I made a motion previously to just have that language deleted. I
believe you're not allowed to do that.
I thought I was just told that we could.
Correct. Yeah, I do believe for this specific issue, as Richard said, a minute order would be appropriate, provided that satisfies the concerns of the commission, and if that is the will of the commission.
And do you believe that this is appealable to the city council?
Then let's see if David's motion has a second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Kathleen, can you call the roll?
Well, I made a motion. Why wasn't that seconded? Why didn't you ask for that to be seconded?
I did, and it didn't get a second. The original motion that you made, David was right that he had previously made a motion. Kathleen, can you call the roll, please?
Vice Chair Weil,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Mazza,
No, I think a appeal to city council will delay this much longer.
Chair Jennings,
Yes.
motion carries.
Is there any further motion? Hearing none, that concludes the item. We'll move from, as a matter of fact, that concludes the consent calendar. No, it doesn't. We have to go back to 3B6. That was pulled by a member of the public. I don't remember her name.
Sharon Karsh, and I don't know that I see her back in the meeting. So I think it's a matter of just voting on it.
But Commissioner Smith was going to recuse himself on this one.
Is this a recommended action is adopt the planning commission resolution for the extension, right? You have to recuse yourself.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. This was part of the consent calendar. I will move to approve the staff recommendation on 3B6. Is there a second?
Yeah, I would second that.
All right. Is there further discussion? Yes, Craig.
I'd just like to clarify on the date that it be the 5-year time limit is December 2nd, 2021. I think they're asking for a year. So is that, can we just say it's December 2nd and that's almost a year, and then we're not running afoul of the 5-year limit?
I'll second that.
So basically what you're asking is for a friendly amendment that would expire when?
December 2nd, 2021.
Rather than December 5th.
2021. I'll accept that as a friendly amendment. If David will, as the seconder, will accept it.
Yes.
All right. Further discussion? Can you call the roll, please, Kathleen?
Chair Jennings,
Yes.
Vice Chair Weil,
Yes.
Commissioner Hill,
Yes.
Commissioner Mazza,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right. That concludes item 3B9 and the consent calendar. Can you get Commissioner Smith back for us, please?
Yes.
And he's back. All right. So this is item 5A, coastal development permit 20-22. It's on a property at 30970 Broad Beach Road. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes. Hi. Good evening, Chair Jennings, members of the Planning Commission. Next item is CDP number 20-022 for a project located at 30970 Broad Beach Road. Next slide, please. The project site is located on the south side of Broad Beach Road. It is located in the appeal jurisdiction of the California Coastal Commission, and it is within the Trancas Beach Overlay District. Next slide, please. After the report was published, staff discovered that a minor 3-foot section of exterior demo had not been accounted for in the staff report. As will be demonstrated later in this presentation, the 3.18 feet of linear exterior demo has been added to the project scope, amending condition 2 of the resolution. With that, the project proposes the following: a 46.6 square foot addition to the street side of the single family residence, and an interior and exterior remodel, including a 96.9, which was originally 93.7, accounting for 20.9%, which was originally 20.1% of existing linear feet of exterior wall demolition to the single-family home, replacement of Ipe decking material on the beachfront decks with no change to size or shape of the decks, and non-structural replacements to building, siding, and roofing. Next slide, please. A little bit of project history. The project was originally submitted back in January of 2020. After review of previously issued permits, staff discovered that according to California Coastal Commission permit number 5-91-442, that a deed restriction was placed on the property requiring that all future developments obtain a CDP. The applicant followed up with materials for a CDP application in May of 2020. Next slide, please. Here's a site plan showing the location of the proposed addition. It is important to note that the site requires a 4-foot wide view corridor on each side of the property. The proposed development will maintain the required view corridor pursuant to LIP Chapter 6. Next slide, please. Another key note is that the development is within the Trancas Beach Overlay District. Pursuant to LIP Chapter 3.4, no development taller than 30 inches will be allowed in areas 1 and 2 as indicated on the Trancas Beach Overlay District map. As you see here, Area 1 begins at approximately 155 feet from Broad Beach Road, and Area 2 begins about 175 feet from Broad Beach Road. The one I have highlighted in red there is the parcel in question. Next slide, please. At a maximum, the new addition is 85 feet from Broad Beach Road, so it is outside areas 1 and 2 of the overlay district. Next slide, please. This slide shows the demolition of the first floor. 62 feet 9 inches of exterior demolition will take place on this floor. The change was not found on this one. Next slide, please. So here's the second floor demolition plan. As previously mentioned, staff discovered after the report was published that one header was in fact changing. It's going to be at the top section there. It's you can't really tell on the floor plan, but when you look at the elevation, indeed the header is changing, and that header change gets incorporated to our demo calcs according to the city's remodel policy. So here you can see that I have included the area that was not originally counted in the demo calculations, a 3.18 foot change to the total. So in total, 96.88 feet of exterior linear walls will be demolished in this project, constituting 20.9% of the entire structure, well below the 50% allowed by the LCP. Next slide, please. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of resolution number 2119 with the recommended changes, approving CDP number 20-022. That concludes my presentation. I and the applicant are available for questions.
Thank you very much. Disclosures? Yes, David.
I visited the site and spoke with the architect and saw the little 46 square foot chunk out of the corner of the bottom floor that looked like it should have been there in the first place, but nothing that wasn't in the report.
Greg?
Yeah, I visited, had a peek down the view corridors, could see that same chunk. I was surprised that the guest house was so high, and in retrospect, I wonder if that could have been the source of why the CDP was required in future back when it was originally approved.
John?
None.
Dennis?
None.
None for me. Shall we open the public hearing? Kathleen, have we got any speakers?
You have the applicant, Ben Goodman.
All right. Let's open up Mr. Goodman. You've got 15 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay. I don't have much more to add to what Tyler said. I think he did a very good job, but I am here to answer any questions if the commissioners have it. In general, the area that we are planning on adding is underneath a second story structure right now. We're adding it on the first story. It's on the non-ocean side of the house, so I don't think it will impact anybody's view that they would currently have. And the rest is mostly an interior remodel and then updating the exterior. We're changing out some windows and doors, and that's about the scope of the project.
All right, you've got 14 minutes and 10 seconds for rebuttal if you want to use it later on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other speakers, Kathleen?
No, sir.
All right, then we'll close the public hearing. We'll come back to the commission table. John?
I'd like to move staff's recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Yes, Craig.
Just as a clarification, the ocean side of the house where work is being done is already proud of the string line. The existing work is proud of it. So if we're basically replacing that work, we treat the new work as legal non-conforming as was the old work, and that's okay. That's
right. They're modifying an existing structure in that case. They're not creating anything new. So there's no as long as they.
The new part they're adding is the part that's south of the string line, but I guess it's because it's part of the whole thing. That's the rationale.
Right. There's limits to what they can do with an existing non-conforming structure if it was in this case, and that would be to keep their non-conformities. Essentially, they would have to remain under 50% of exterior demolition, which they are, and also would not be able to add more than a 10% increase to the floor area, which they are not. And so in this case, any non-conformities they'd be allowed to keep.
Mm-hmm. And then just a quick comment, the C rise that they're using wouldn't normally be adequate by the current CCC standards, but because this is an existing house and we don't necessarily expect to see another 100 years of life out of it, I think in this particular case it's okay to go with that, with the lower standard that they've used. And finally, I'll just note that this to me looks like the future of building in Malibu, basically rearranging an existing house.
Not only the future, it's the recent past, at least along on the beach. Any further discussion? All right, Kathleen, can you call the roll?
Commissioner Mazza?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Vice Chair Weil?
Yes.
Chair Jennings?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, that concludes item 5, whatever it was, 5A. The next item is item 5C. Would a 10-minute break be appropriate before we begin? What's the commission's pleasure?
Sure.
10-minute break. We'll be back at 22 minutes after 8. Turn off your mics, turn off your screens.
Okay. Back.
Okay. Me, John and Craig. Got Richard. Craig. And we got John, and we got everybody, looks like. Okay, so we are going to resume the Malibu Planning Commission regular meeting of February 16th, 2021, by calling item 5C. This is Coastal Development Permit 816-025 at 33603 Pacific Coast Highway. And BDA, are you out there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, can we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Chair Jennings and members of the Planning Commission. The next item on the agenda is Coastal Development Permit number 16-025, including variance number 16-013, variance number 16-014, site plan review number 16-028, and site plan review number 20-078 for a project located at 33603 Pacific Coast Highway. Next slide, please. The subject parcel is approximately 25 acres in size and is located on the inland side of Pacific Coast Highway in western Malibu. Next slide, please. The proposed scope of work includes demolition of the existing 3,385 square foot single-family residence and associated development, including patio, concrete road, swimming pool, 552 square foot garage, abandonment of the existing on-site wastewater treatment system, and construction of a new 9,360.5 square foot, two-story single-family residence, including an 871 square foot, six-car subterranean garage basement, a swimming pond, decks, landscape and hardscape, open-air trellis, terracing and detention basins, fire department turnaround and driveway improvements, and 217 cubic yards of non-exempt grading, retaining walls, and a new OWTS. Next slide, please. The project also consists of variance number 16-013 to exceed the allowable grading by 160 cubic yards, variance number 16-014 to exceed the allowable TDSF by 5,241.5 square feet, site plan review number 16-28 for construction up to 28 feet for a pitched roof, site plan review number 20-078 for remedial grading, and demolition permit number 19-047 for the demolition of the existing single-family residence, garage, and associated development. Next slide, please. And I believe, Alex, I had sent another version of the PowerPoint presentation that's missing one slide. Just give us a second while Alex pulls up the latest version of the PowerPoint presentation.
Hey, Didier, it looks like that was the most recent one that we were sent from the email that you wrote me before the meeting.
Okay, I'll move on. So I'll just talk over slide 5, which is just describing the existing development on site. So the slide previous to this one, just stating that the property has historically been used as an equestrian facility. It is currently developed with a 3,384 square foot 2-story single family residence, 552 square foot garage, 1,807 square foot guest house, a 3,648 square foot horse barn, 1,146 square foot studio building, 452 square foot hay barn, tennis court, 3 water tanks, corrals, hardscape and fencing, and an OWTF. The existing TDSF is 10,990 square feet with all the development as mentioned previously, and the allowable TDSF for the subject site is 11,172 square feet. The subject application proposes to demolish the existing 2-story single-family residence and garage, resulting in a remaining 7,053 square foot of TDSF on the site. The application is proposing construction of a new 9,360.5 square foot 2-story single-family residence, including a subterranean garage basement, resulting in a TDSF of 16,413.5 square feet. So this slide talks about the terraced hillside. And so the city is aware that an unpermitted orchard and grading resulting in a terraced hillside are present on the property. The unpermitted orchard and terrace hillside are located on the northern portion of the hillside and are part of this application requested to be permitted after the fact. Next slide, please. Here we have the site plan, and I just wanted to point out in the green highlight the outline of the proposed single-family residence. Below that, we have the proposed fire department turnaround in red, and below that, off to the right, we have the proposed swimming pond highlighted in blue. Next slide, please. The proposed project includes a subterranean garage, and in accordance with LAP section 3.6K3, the first 1,000 square feet of the subterranean garage have now been included in the TDSF calculation for the property. For every 2 square feet over the initial 1,000 square feet, 1 square foot is counted towards the TDSF. As the proposed subterranean garage is 2,743.5 square feet, we have subtracted the 1,000 square feet, and the remaining gets divided by 2, so the total 871.75 square feet was included in the TDSF calculation. Next slide, please. The first floor consists of 3,455 square feet. Next slide. The proposed second floor consists of 2,145 square feet. Next slide, please. Here we have story poles. So story poles were installed in January 2021, and staff visited the project site on February 3rd, 2021, photo documented the story poles. Here we have pictures from the inside showing the proposed development in front of the proposed house to be demolished. Next slide, please. Here we have pictures from Pacific Coast Highway. The story poles are difficult to see, especially while driving along the highway. I attempted to include these yellow circles to point out where the story poles would be visible, but even if I zoom in on my photographs, it's really hard to see the story poles from. I think I took them from the center of the road as well as across the street from Pacific Coast Highway. Next slide, please. Here we have the reason why we are recommending the denial of the proposed project. So they are requesting variance to exceed the allowable grading per LAP section 13.26. Previous city approvals have resulted in 943 cubic yards of non-accept grading. The project includes variance number 16-013 to allow for an additional 217 cubic yards of non-accept grading, which will result in 1,160 cubic yards, which is 160 cubic yards above the allowable 1,000 cubic yards. Based on the evidence contained in the record, Planning Department staff recommends denial of variance number 16-013. The second variance is to exceed the allowable total development square footage. The subject application proposes to demolish the existing 3,385 square foot 2-story single-family residence and 552 square foot garage, resulting in a remaining 7,053 square foot TDSF on the site. The application is then proposing construction of a new 9,360.5 square foot, two-story single-family residence, including a subterranean garage, resulting in TDSF of 16,413.5 square feet for the property. The project includes variance number 16014 to exceed that maximum allowed by 5,241.5 square feet beyond the allowable per LIP section 3.6K. Based on the evidence contained within the record, Planning Department staff recommends denial of variance number 16-014. Next slide, please. In summary, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 21-15 denying the proposed project. This concludes my presentation. The applicant and staff are available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Didier. Disclosures, please. Start with you, David.
Visited the site, met on site. I actually was there at the same time as Dennis. Met with the architect and didn't discuss anything that isn't in the report.
Dennis?
Same, met, happened to be there at the same time as Commissioner Weil. Spoke with Lauren Kaufman, the architect. Didn't learn anything different that's in the staff report.
John?
I met with Lauren Kaufman with Craig. We spent an hour going over the plans and looking at the project. I didn't learn anything that wasn't in, well, I learned one thing that wasn't in the staff report, and that is how deep the gully is around the property, around that house.
Craig?
Yeah, first, somebody's cat is playing with tinfoil or something, it sounds like. I don't know if they're bothering anybody else, but there's some weird sound going on.
I don't hear it.
I don't hear it either.
It's not happening at the moment, but it just was for the last 10 minutes. So anyway, what John said, also learned that the terracing and planting was done without the permit in recent years, and it looked to be in areas that was evidently de facto ESHA, even if not mapped as ESHA. It's basically the same as what was above there. Learned that the CUP for the riding camp expired in 1994, which made me wonder about why are there still at least 4 riding rings on the site. And I looked on base and found what I thought looks to be evidence of more grading in the past than is even in the staff report. I sent an email to Didier that was copied all out to you guys today about that. It looks to me like basically in round numbers about double the amount of grading as was disclosed. That's it on the disclosure.
None for me. Questions of staff? Anybody? Or should we open the public hearing? Craig?
You can go ahead. I can ask my question later, I think.
All right, let's open the public hearing. Who have we got, Kathleen?
We have the applicant, Lauren Kaufman.
All right. Lauren, are you going to unmute her?
Yes.
Okay, you have 15 minutes, Lauren.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm just waiting for the presentation to come up.
Sure.
Okay, there we go. Thank you all. I've been the architect on this project since 2010, for this property since 2010. This presentation will not be about a variance request for additional square footage to accommodate a larger new main house. This presentation will be about addressing the unique characteristics and developmental scope of this very gracious equestrian and agrarian property. Next slide, please. As you can see, this is the slope analysis map. The red area is the one-to-one slope. And when we remove that from our overall square footage of 24.9 acres, the red area being 9.47 acres, we are left with 15.43 acres of total buildable area. The slope analysis map helps us clearly see the extensive total buildable area, all located south of the ESHA area. The property, so the map on the left is the upper northern portion of the site. and I've dotted in the end of the Escher line. And the map on the right is the lower portion, southern portion of the site where all of the development takes place. I would say that this property can almost be divided into 3 areas of development. We have the equestrian area, which is historically in the southern portion of the site with a dressage ring, and then a new barn and in the footprint of existing previous corrals, which you'll see later in this presentation, and a hay barn. And then the proposed residential area where the existing house is, I've sort of dotted that in, and the swimming pond area. And then the agrarian area, which is just north and a little bit to the west of where the residence is. We have the permatecture slopes. That's the grading area that is done under the BMP, Best Management Practice Erosion Control for the property, and the existing avocado orchids. If we could go to the next slide, please. So I was very intrigued to see what happened to the 20-acre lots in Malibu, across from Malibu. And I studied all the rural residential properties and was looking for those with 15 buildable acres. That might also be equestrian ranches and agricultural development. I did not find any. So, but what I did find were examples of ESHA, large ESHA properties. Mostly those were the RR20s, where properties had been combined, perhaps to allow for 17,000 square foot residences. Not a lot of them, but some. And also, much to my dismay, rural RR5 areas that had been allowed to subdivide into multiple 1-acre sites. All of those were post 2004. Next slide, please. So this is a view, it's a rendering from the PCH as if you are going to the east. And I think it's interesting to note and discuss compatibility with the scale of the neighborhood, because of course the main residence is large, and the homes across the street, which is really the only developed areas, because to the west is a commercial recreational property of 89 acres, and to the east is vacant land, RR5. But across the street, we do have properties that range in size from 1,200 square feet up to 7,500 square feet. And I would say that being that our accessory buildings are located on the southern portion, I think they blend very well with the scale of the homes across the street. The horse barn is 3,600 square feet, hay barn is 462 square feet, and the studio building is 1,146. They all have pitched roofs and appear very residential in nature. They're covered in stone and wood, and they blend quite nicely with the mountains beyond and the sloping terrain. Another thing that I've included on this slide is actually this definition that I found in the City of Malibu General Plan from 1995, that in defining agricultural use, traditional farming and ranching is practiced in only a minute fraction of land within the city. Horticulture and horse ranches are more prevalent, usually as a transitional use or an adjunct to residential uses. Residents view preservation of these uses as important to the preservation of the rural atmosphere of the community. That was from the City of Malibu General Plan 1995. I think that captures everything about the unusual quality of this property. Next slide, please. So let's talk about history of this property. Yes, this property had a conditional use permit. I believe it was from 1975 to about 1995 or 1994, as mentioned. It was for a, the actual description was, depicts the site plan, which you see on the left. That is the site plan from, it was Exhibit A from the conditional use permit request in 1985. And that exhibit depicts a dressage ring, a jump ring, 3 stalls, 3 tack rooms, feed and sawdust storage, 2 turnout pastures, 35 corrals, a hot walker, a turnout ring, a tennis court, caretaker house, single family residence with pool and garage, bunkhouse, and gardener's trailer. 2 service roads provide access to all facilities and residences. There's landscape throughout and a chain link fence on the southern and eastern boundaries. That was the description at the time. They also had, this permit was through the Los Angeles County Department of Regional Planning. It was to continue the operation of Rancho Vista Del Mar, an equestrian facility with horse boarding and training. And it also had a summer camp for about eight kids. The general plan for this area at that time was mountain land, 1 unit for 20 acres, allowing low intensity commercial recreation. The conditional use renewal was approved, and the owner has part of me presenting this is to show you the comparison to the new plan, that there has been no new grading in this area. The rings existed. I have permits, copies from the county days for the dressage ring, for the road, for the tennis court, for the house. So these were approved grading projects, and the owner has just chosen to develop them. I also want to mention that in the site plan on the left, the grading violation that occurred in 2004 was when the owner first purchased the property. There was a structure that was rat infested at the end of the riding ring. He did choose, to demolish it with a bulldozer, which got into that hillside a little bit. And those two combined was how the violation appeared. That hill was restored. That is a hill from the dressage ring up to the flat area where those corrals are, where currently the new horse barn sits. And that violation was resolved. I was on board and had the final inspection by the Coastal Commission to clear that violation. Next slide, please. Sorry. So in this slide is a review of some of the new grading for the new main house. On the right, far right, you can see the driveway, which is very straight, almost too steep for a ladder fire truck. So we're looking to have a more gracious access to the main house, which will also assist in slowing the sheet flow of rainwater. I also want to mention that all the entry drives currently have permeable pavers, which greatly assist in less water ending up on the PCH and in the neighbors' front yards. That was done just by choice by the owner. Wasn't required for any of the projects because we weren't doing the new main house yet. So that's the road. And throughout the project, I've I've chosen, where possible, not to have retaining walls and to instead utilize, sort of more shallow slopes to create a more graceful and natural property. So you could see along the road as it loops around the swimming pond, there's a little bit of grading there to ease into that existing pad. And we are looking to make use of that, what was a second dressage area, and make it into a swimming pond and planted all around the edge with vineyard grapes, organic grapes. And then the other area of, so that is a steep slope. It is, I think, 2.5 to 1. We're looking to make it 3 to 1 so that you could actually walk around that area from the new main house. On the west side, there's a photo up in the far left corner. That is the existing ravine. It is eroded by water flow that comes down from the upper hills. And in making that, doing remedial grading to make that a 3 to 1 slope, it actually allows us to have a better structural, more economical foundation system. And it also provides for a more natural fire department access around the property. I was asked to do a study by Bonnie Blue, which is on this slide. You could see the 2 sections through the house on the west, which show the west side slope, and how the top image shows, the proposed grading, a more natural 3 to 1 slope, where the fire department access will be a path, set into the slope, very, very accessible. If we don't achieve the grading requested, then the access will be more like a bridge structure, and it would be floating up in the air. It's certainly doable, but I don't think it's something Malibu would really like because it's additional structures when we don't really need it. And the last drawing that I have up here, it shows the east elevation of the proposed house. Dotted, it is proposed exactly where the current house and swimming pool are. And that is dotted in the yellow marker. That's the existing house and the pool. And as you could see, the existing house is taller than the proposed new house. Of course, the new house is longer and it's set down following the slope as it steps down the slope. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we are looking at the upper terrace area. On the left, on the right, it's the same view. The one on the right is the civil drawing. It's a little bit larger, takes in more scope of the property. But on the left is let's see. So the area on the left serves 2 functions. So one, it helps with erosion that comes down from the upper Esha area. There was a lot of erosion in this area, and by just developing, it already had sort of gentle rolling slope to it. We just cut in a little bit to exaggerate it so that it allows water coming down the face of that slope to actually rest and sink into those terraces, and therefore allowing the owner to plant that slope, which also will greatly aid with erosion control, because right before that, you could not plant anything on that slope. It will be utilize the principles of permaculture design, which emphasizes patterns of landscape, function, and species assemblies so they can provide maximum benefit to the local environment. So for example, it's not all one type of plant, like all apple trees or all plum trees. It's a combination, all mixed together each, attracting different insects, providing different climates to each other. The 3 of those terraces have been planted. There is a photo of it. It looks sort of wild and unkempt, but that's kind of the nature of permatexture agriculture. On the drawing to the right, you can see a little circle. That's where the fire water tank is, 50,000 gallon dedicated fire water tank. And around it and a little further up to that dotted line, which is the ASHA line taken from the City of Malibu maps, are the existing avocado trees.
Excuse me, that is 15 minutes. Did you want to allow a little more time?
Yes, I'm just going to my last slide. So.
Let's just get through the last slide and then we'll wrap it up.
Thank you.
That would be great. So I asked the question, so what will this property become? This is a unique rural, residential, equestrian, and agricultural property with a new main residence and existing accessory buildings in scale with the grand size of this property on a site developed to embody the true conservation and environmental sensitivity unique to Malibu within a TDSF of 16,413.5 square feet as currently requested, or will this property succumb to a subdivision by a future owner into 4 lots, which will allow 10,169 total development square feet per each 6.2 acre lots for a total TDSF of 40,677 square feet. So that's the big question, and I hope you review this with what is good for the community and what will they most, reap a benefit from having in their environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other speakers, Kathleen?
No, sir, that is it.
That's it. All right.
Yes.
No other speakers. We'll close the public hearing. We'll come back to the commission table for comments and a motion. Who would like to begin? John.
To start things off, I'd like to make a motion to accept staff's recommendation as presented in the resolution.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'm sorry. David, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I will second that motion.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion?
I would like to ask just one quick question. Once the staff denial, and I guess this is for Lauren, if that's okay, was there any attempt to work out just a smaller TDSF structure that would be mutually satisfactory to the city and the owner?
Lauren, can you unmute Lauren, please?
Okay. The owner wants a property, a family property. He wants a home. It's not just a guest house. He wants a home for his 3 grown children to come with their families. And this is the family property. The property is large enough to absorb this amount of square footage. As we reviewed in the beginning, it's 15.5 buildable acres. The TDSF stops at 5 acres. I think there's room for negotiation here. And I think this property is worth preserving in its, single owner state. And so I guess the answer to that question is he preferred to see it through. He's very passionate about this property. He has no interest in subdividing this property. So when I talk about that as an option, it's not his option. It's just about the future.
Let me say, I think you've done an amazing job of designing the property. I mean, I've had horses all my life. I used to have horses out at the riding and tennis club, and the rings, the barn, the whole thing just makes my mouth water. But the rules are the rules. I mean, the total development square footage. I've never seen anybody come forward and ask for a variance on the total development square footage numbers. And I can't even imagine what rationale there would be to support the findings that we have to make for a variance. So, I mean, if you were building this in, I don't know, Chino Hills or someplace like that, it would be an amazing project. But we're bound by our rules, and in order to be able to find a variance, we have to make the findings that the law requires. And there's just been no showing of that as far as I'm concerned. John, you had your hand up.
I just want to point out, it's not just the size. There's certain areas of this staff report and our plans that are just not even close. We have 13,000 cubic yards of grading for safety and remedial, which includes grading one-to-one slopes, creating a pond, filling in a gully that's at least 10 feet deep. Practically the whole area around the house is called remedial. It's not. And then there's a major problem in the fact that the basement is not a basement. It daylights for one whole side. And it does not even come close to qualifying as a garage, underground garage. So there's another, I forgot how many thousand square feet added. So, and I could name like 10 other things that are way off. But, and Craig mentioned before the grading that was done without permits before. So it's not just the size. It's, you're talking probably another 4,000 square feet that isn't counted, 13,000 square feet of grading that isn't counted. It's not remedial or safety. Grading on one-to-one slopes. The house itself is built partially on a one-to-one slope. So we can spend all night on that stuff, but I do think that the staff did a good job on this. With the exception, I think they miscalculated the grading. And so hopefully we can move the question.
Craig?
I'll first just say, sort of on Ms. Kaufman's behalf, it's surprising that it's gotten this far, given the rules that we do have, and that somebody, hopefully there'd been more realism earlier on. But as a matter of form, if we have a motion on the table now, how relevant or important is it to add any additional issues to that motion for reference for the record? Like, for example, I have a real issue with the 2/3 rule and how that's been implemented here, and whether we would add that on the reasons to deny, or do we just say deny, go back to the drawing board? It doesn't really matter why.
There really hasn't been any showing, or even really any attempt to show for the variances. The recommendation is to deny, for the inability to find the variances. I personally think that we can just take a vote and let it go at that. I know that there are all kinds of questions we can talk about, but if we're talking about the details of a project which literally can't be built in its current form. So,
I mean, the risk is they come back and they say, okay, we have fixed the grading. We're not going to do this big remedial thing, and we cut down the TDSF, and now we're ready to go. And at that point, we look and go, well, hang on, there's these other issues that we never brought up the first time.
Right, and that's always a risk, but really we're not going to vote on those issues now. So there's no sense in really exploring the details of whether there are 3 votes on 2/3 rule or whatever.
Anything that comes back as a new project, we have to look at everything over again.
Yeah, Dennis,
do we offer, Chair Jennings, do we offer the continuance on this and let them try and work through it, or they're just not going to do it, you think?
It seemed to me that they were pretty clear that they didn't want they just wanted to see it through. I can ask Lauren if she would prefer to withdraw the application at this point and try to redesign it. It seems so far, but it wouldn't hurt to ask. So let me see if I can do that. David, before I do, did you have a comment?
No, I was just going to tell you that she has her hand raised there, and that was why I asked my question earlier, was to see if there's room, even just on one issue, to TDSF, and it didn't sound like there was.
No, I can't see her hand being raised, but that's no surprise. Lauren, can you unmute Lauren?
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah. The issue, Lauren, is whether you want to withdraw the application at this point rather than have a denial.
Well, I asked my client the other day, and he wanted to see it through. Like I said, the issue is, unless you're offering, something in between. I mean, the current house fits the 11,172. So why would he tear down the current house to build a new house?
Good question. But we're really not offering a negotiation. We're not in a position to negotiate.
Mm-hmm. I also want to mention that, this did go through planning, and the 2/3 rule is not incorrect as proposed. And also, it's come to light as I reviewed. I know it's not, I'm just saying it almost for the record, okay? That the grading amount, all of the existing grading was done before Malibu, sort of became a city. So if the issue is that one is penalized for what happened when it was county, I mean, I have grading permits that I can produce for going forward. It would be good to know.
I think that if you go back to planning, your best hope is to go back to planning. They can explain to you what grading was counted and what grading wasn't counted. John may disagree with the analysis on that, but planning is the one who's going to come up with a recommendation on this. As far as the 2/3 rule is concerned, that's really counting the number of angels that can dance on the head of a pin at this point. It really is not the issue that you face. So I take it your decision is you wish to push forward with it, and that's fine. That being the case, Kathleen, can you call the roll? Now, let's make sure they understand the motion. John's motion is a motion to deny. It's a motion to accept the staff's recommendation to deny the project. That was the motion.
Right.
All righty. Commissioner Mazza?
Yes.
Vice Chair Weil?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Chair Jennings?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, that concludes the program for the evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Is there a second? Would you call the roll, Kathleen?
Commissioner Mazza?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
It's so early. Should we play Monopoly or something? Yes.
Vice Chair Weil?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Chair Jennings?
Yes.
Did I get everybody, Commissioner Mazza?
You got us all.
Oh, certainly. Okay. Motion carries.
Aloha.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.